please be upstanding for the Honourable Mayor and Deputy Mayor.
Please take a seat. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Council. My name is Councillor Adrian Mather. I'm the Mayor of Wokingham and I will chair this meeting. Before we start the business set out in the agenda, I would like to go through a few preliminaries. Please note that this meeting is currently being webcast live. There are no fire drills planned this evening. If the fire alarm does sound, please leave the building via the nearest exit and gather at Muster Point 2, which is located in the car park at the rear of the building. A reminder that councillors do need to stand when speaking in the chamber. When speaking, please speak directly into the microphone. If councillors turn away from the microphone, the sound will not be picked up for online attendees. Also, can councillors ensure that your nameplate is clearly displayed in front of you? And may I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution. Are there any apologies?
There are 4 apologies: Councillor Bassett Alvey, Councillor Mark Ashwell, Councillor Norman Jorgensen and Councillor Lou Timlin.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. May I sign the minutes of the annual council meeting held on the 23rd of January 2025 as a correct record? Can I have a show of hands? Those 4, please. Thank you. Those against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Councillors are reminded that you do not have to declare an interest as a council taxpayer. You also do not need to declare an interest in relation to members' allowances. Does anyone wish to declare an interest in any item on the agenda? Just Andrew. Andrew, please go ahead.
I'd like to declare an interest in item 100, the housing revenue account. The property that I own, the freehold, is owned by Wokingham Borough Council, so I pay service charges. So I've been advised not to vote on that item.
Thank you very much, Andrew. In terms of Mayor's announcements, they're quite brief this month. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to 2 recently elected councillors who have recently joined us. First, a very warm welcome back to Councillor Jackie Rance, who was elected as Ward Councillor for Shinfield in early December. And apologies. Apologies for missing you last time, but there was, if you remember, a dramatic event at the start of last month's meeting. Secondly, a very warm welcome to Councillor Chetna Jamtha, who joins us following the Winnersh by-election earlier this month. Now we move on to public question time. Please be reminded that supplementary questions must relate either to the original question or the response that is given to the question, and must be no longer than 1 minute. I would like to remind executive councillors that responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes, and these will be timed. Tonight we have 3 public questions. Miss Jane Holmes, please would you put your question? I believe you're online, Jane. Is that correct? Oh, she's not attending. Okay, I'll move on to Mr. Philip Medicroft. Would you like to ask your question, please, Philip?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's meeting will be dominated by the budget debate. Councillors and residents still haven't had the benefit of seeing clean Wokingham audited annual accounts for the last 3 years. These overdue, independently disclaimed audits appear bogged down over the absence of agreed values for the council's property assets. Hopes of these asset values ever being agreed and published seem to recede day by day. So one wonders how and why this evening's budget debate can be conducted in their absence. Without an unequivocal and independently verified confirmation of where we've been financially, without a clue of where we are now, where is the sense in discussing tonight where we hope to be going? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Meadowcroft. It gives me an opportunity to report on the very positive progress. Yeah, you are echoing. The very positive progress we have made over the last 3 months regarding the council's audited accounts, annual accounts. As I explained to you at our council in September 2024, you asked for a similar question about our statement of accounts. Many local authorities have been subjected to a system-wide problem of local authority audit backlogs across the country. This was not a problem unique to Wokingham Borough Council. And as I stressed to you then, this situation was largely outside of the control of the council. However, I am very pleased to report that in December 2024, the statement of accounts for the years 21-22, 22 and 23 was signed off by the previous external auditors, Ernst & Young. On the 10th of February 2025, the Audit Committee received the 23-24 statement of accounts, together with a new external auditor's opinion, who are now KPMG. Essentially, this means that we are up to date with the audited statements of accounts. I'd like to thank the Audit Committee and our officers and our external auditors in their work in helping us reach this important milestone. With reference to your concern about the valuations, KPMG presented the Audit Committee with the details and the assurances of the extensive audit work that was conducted, and I could quote directly from the KPMG's report that states, based on the work completed, we concluded that the valuation of the council's dwellings and other land and buildings was appropriate, which I believe is auditor speak for it's okay. This leaves us well placed in the national context and where many other local authorities find themselves. Further assurances on our financial position and the proposed budget can be found in the Council Chief Financial Officer's report contained in our MTFP tonight. Thank you.
Philip, do you have a supplementary question?
Your recollection of the Audit Committee's meeting last week is rather different from what I picked up. The members were told by the new auditors, KPMG, that there were significant control deficiencies, unreliable controls within Wokingham's finance department. KPMG had even unearthed a 10.4 million overstatement of council assets in a prior year. KPMG said that the disclaimed audit label will appear on their Wokingham audits for the foreseeable future. That calls for serious and immediate intervention by councillors. Here's my supplementary question. Why, given KPMG's shocking findings, aren't you questioning the quality and competence of the staff and management of our borough's finance department, given that not only these appalling administrative and financial deficiencies which were identified by KPMG last week, but perhaps what may be being covered up?
As you know, I'm not a member of the Audit Committee, but I certainly watched it online, and I've spoken to people who are on the Audit Committee, and they are as happy as they can be with the outcome. Obviously, KPMG can't sign off things that were audited by Ernst & Young, which is possibly why we're getting still some disclaimed audits, but they have categorically said that they are happy with the work, the things that they found, and I've not heard of any of our Audit Committee members saying there's a problem, or our officers.
The next public question is from Mr. Andy Crew, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for the Executive Member for Finance again. before I start it relates to the top of page 159 of your reports pack. So the MTFP at the top of page 159 provided states that there has been a core spending power grant reduction of 2% in 2025-26 compared to 24-25, equal to circa 1 million per annum, excluding the grant for national insurance new burden. As I'm sure you know, the grant for national insurance, which is being excluded from this calculation, is 1.2 million. Is it not more accurate to say that there has been no reduction in the core spending grant, and indeed, the core spending grant has risen by 220,000?
Thank you for your question, Andy. From the draft local government finance settlement issued before Christmas, it was clear that there was going to be a reduction in the core government grant allocated to this council of approximately 1 million. As often is the case, there was very little chance in the change in the final settlement that was issued in February. In fact, our core government grant changed by only £15,000. As you rightly say, the national insurance grant of 1.2 million was added to the final settlement as the core grant to reimburse the council for the impact of the additional national insurance costs it would be incurring on its directly employed staff. However, we estimate that the additional cost of the national insurance increase to be actually in excess of 1.5 million. While making year-on-year comparisons, it's important that they are like for like, or they are in danger of being misleading. Therefore, the calculation either requires a grant to be taken out of the 25-26 budget, or as an additional national insurance budget that didn't exist in 24-25, which gives us a shortfall of 1 million. Or we can't add the grant and the new burden in 25-26, which increases the shortfall in funding from 1 million to 1.3 million. The 1.3 million shortfall being your £200,000 core grant increase minus the 1.5 million estimated costs in the national insurance increase.
Andy, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. It's good to finally hear somebody acknowledge that the government provided extra money, however grudgingly that admission has been made. So let's be clear then, there's an extra £1.2 million, but what you seem to be saying is it's the wrong sort of money. It's the right sort of money. It's the wrong sort of money. You'll get a chance. Where are you? Where's she gone? There she is. Yeah, you'll get a chance later, Pauline, don't worry. So it's the wrong sort of money. But even if it's the wrong sort of money, it replaces the right sort of money that you were going to have to use to pay the national insurance increases. So there are several other grants which are in that sort of category. They're ring-fenced, like the social care grant, the better care grant, the domestic abuse grant. These are all funds are ring-fenced. Presumably you're counting those as well. That's not my question. My final question, my question is, I want to make this really, really clear. Let's see if we can get it right twice in a row. So if I have negative 1 million and I add 1.2 million, what does that equal?
I'm afraid to say, I mean, Stephen wrote to the government when we realised what our local government settlement would be, which would be minus 1 million, and the response that they gave him back did acknowledge we were minus 1 million. But on top of that, we are minus 1.5 million for national insurance, which we knew about. So we got 1.2 million back for that, fair enough. And we have had other grants, but really all they've been offering us is extra responsibility, not extra money. And don't forget, you are missing the point of the 3.5 million that we were expecting to pay for national insurance on our adult social care bill, which for this coming year. So I'm not quite sure how your numbers add up, sorry.
Thank you. That concludes public questions. Andy and Philip, you're very welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but can I ask that you view the meeting from the public gallery, please? Thank you. Do we move on to petitions? Does any member have a petition? Nagy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Am I good to go?
Yeah, I think you get 3 minutes, is that correct? You have 3 minutes to speak, Nagy.
Thank you. I am pleased to present this petition, which highlights residents' valid concerns over Lib Dem's plans to implement new car parking charges in car parks across the borough. While the main focus has been on Cantley Park, which is used by a wide variety of groups for sporting and leisure activities, we must not forget that the Lib Dems have proposed implementing charges at Ashenbury Country Park in Woodley, School Green in Shinfield, which serves a community centre and a school, and Every Corner in Finchampstead. This is also used by parents dropping children off at a school, as well as shoppers at California Crossroads. There has rightly been an uproar from residents, and the strength of feeling is shown by more than 2,000 people signing Labour's petition in just 48 hours. Those who signed include parents worried it would cost them nearly £10 just to watch their child play sport, volunteers who dedicate their time staging classes or working behind the scenes at Wokingham Theatre, and those who play hockey, tennis, football, archery, and volunteers who coach these sports, and also those women who rely on parking near the recreation area to avoid the risk of walking in the dark after exercising with friends, dog owners who value the importance of social connection the facilities bring, and those who use Cantley to meet friends and take part in recreational activities or attend informal support groups. All were unanimously against bringing in charges at these car parks. The Lib Dems have U-turned on car parking charges at Cantley, but only for 1 year. We are presenting this petition not only to show the strength of public opposition to charges, but also to note that while the Lib Dems have said they won't be implementing charges at Cantley, this decision comes with some caveats. They have only ruled it out Cantley Park for 1 year and not at other locations. There is nothing to stop the executive choosing to impose charges by publishing a TRO notice and going ahead anyway. The Lib Dems are now linking car park income with maintaining the parks, which was never the stated intention or justification when this was raised at scrutiny meetings. This approach implies more price rises for groups who are already expecting increases as a result of tonight's budget. And these increases are set at rates above inflation. This is unfair. The Lib Dems talk about the desire for effective and meaningful community partnerships, yet they have attempted to take money off clubs, parents, volunteers, and those wanting to live a healthy lifestyle. It penalizes people for enjoying exercise, fresh air, and puts the future of some clubs in doubt. Everyone who signed Labour's petition wanted the council to commit to scrapping plans to implement these new car parking charges. They want a clear commitment that the parking at recreational sites and small retail centres that are currently free will continue to be free. Not just now, but into the future too. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagy. Can you please hand your petition to Democratic Services, who will pass your petition on to the appropriate officials? Thank you very much. We now move on to the main item in tonight's agenda, the medium-term financial plan and associated reports. This item comprises 4 budget reports which will be considered together under this agenda item. The 4 reports are the Housing Revenue Account Budget 2025-26, the Capital Programme and Strategy 25-26, the Treasury Management Strategy 25-28, the Capital Programme is also to 28, and the Medium-Term Financial Plan 2025-28, including the Revenue Budget Submission 2025-26. I would like to remind members that we have 1.5 hours for consideration of this item. I understand that Councillor Stephen Conway is proposing these reports. Is that correct?
It is, Mr. Mayor.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Imogen. Thanks. Thank you. I would like to...
Would you like me to begin?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Please go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you. Without sound finances, a council can do nothing to help the community it serves. We are fortunate to have such an experienced and well-respected Chief Finance Officer and dedicated staff throughout the organisation. I was planning to say that anyway, but it's even more important to say it in light of something that was said earlier in this meeting. The Council's officers are its greatest asset. Councillors owe them a debt of gratitude for their hard work in preparing the budget for 2025-26. I'm also grateful to my executive colleagues for their work in the budget setting process, particularly the Executive Member for Finance and Governance, Imogen Shepherd-Dubey. Councillors of all parties on the various overview and scrutiny committees played an important part too. They subjected the draft budget papers to close questioning over many months. And I want to thank Mark Brunel-Walker, the Chairman of Community and Corporate, for the thoughtful report that his committee submitted. It was a model of constructive engagement between an overview and scrutiny committee and the Council's executive. And I want to thank the members of the public who became involved in the budget process. As a result of the financial pressures on the Council, we have had to contemplate unpalatable options. But after having listened to the concerns expressed by Cantley Park user groups, the executive decided not to proceed with car parking charges at Cantley or at any of the other 3 council-owned facilities originally considered. And I have to say, Naji, you don't seem to be willing to take yes for an answer. We will instead engage with users to identify better ways to ensure the long-term financial viability of these community assets. Unpalatable choices have been forced on all councils as they struggle with increased demand for services, especially in adults and children's social care, and the rising cost in the delivery of those services. Councils have also experienced a long-term diminution of central government support. Faced with rising demand, rising costs, and declining funding, a growing number of councils have become insolvent. The new government has sought to offer more support to local authorities, but that for support has been focused on those councils where a significant portion of the population are living in deprivation. By this metric, Wokingham appears less in need of support than any other comparable council. But though need and deprivation are clearly linked, not all need is generated by deprivation. We will continue our efforts to persuade the government that the allocation of revenue support needs to reflect the true costs of providing adult and children's social care, which currently account for more than 2/3 of our total spend. Those costs can fall as heavily on councils in areas of relatively low levels of deprivation as they do on councils with a relatively high level of deprivation. Councils across the country, regardless of their residents' income levels, are experiencing alarming deficits in their dedicated schools grant, caused by a mismatch between statutory duties dating back to 2014 and the resources that government provides to fulfil them. While the debt is off the council's balance books, the interest is not. This problem, which became apparent for us in 2017, can only be solved by a national change in funding arrangements. For many years, Wokingham Borough Council has received the lowest level of revenue support from central government of any local authority in England with the same responsibilities. That situation was made more challenging in the latest local government finance settlement, in which we had our core revenue support reduced by £1 million. Thankfully, the government has tempered the impact of its increased employers' contribution to national insurance by giving us £1.2 million to cover that additional expense. But as the cost of the national insurance increase was £1.5 million for Wokingham, we are in fact £300,000 short of full reimbursement. That £300,000 needs to be added to the £1 million we have lost in core revenue support. We are in short £1.3 million down, much more if we include the likely additional national insurance costs that will be passed on to us by contracted social care providers. A very low level of government support means that we are more reliant than any other comparable council on what we raise locally, mainly through the council tax. We are very mindful that any increase in the council tax will cause difficulties for some residents. We will, as in previous years, try to support those for whom payment is a struggle. But we must recognise that the government, as did its predecessor, assumes in its calculation of our core spending power an increase in the council tax to its capped maximum level. If we don't increase the council tax to the government's cap, ministers will conclude that we don't need even the low level of revenue support that they give us. And if a council tax increase is foregone, the revenue is not just lost for that year, it's lost in perpetuity. The long-term impact can, and often is, disastrous. When they ran the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, the Conservatives held council tax down to boost their popularity, regardless of the increasing cost of services. The inevitable consequences are now obvious to everyone. The Royal Borough has used up its reserves and it has run out of money. The price of financial failure, to remind everyone, is high. Central government can intervene to impose swingeing council tax increases and swingeing cuts to services. We are determined to protect our residents from that fate. In setting this year's budget, we have had 3 strategic objectives. First, to help those who need it most. Second, to plan for the long term. And third, to secure the benefits of working in partnership. When times are tough, most people would accept that those who need help most should be prioritised. This is why we have sought to protect adults and children's service spending, though even these vital areas have not been exempted from the need to make efficiencies. It's also why we have sought to ensure that residents in financial hardship are given what support we can provide. Planning for the long term means engaging in prevention and early intervention measures which avoid problems arising or address them before they become serious. Prevention and early intervention measures lead to better outcomes for our residents, but they also save the council tax payer money in the long run by reducing financial pressures on services downstream. Investing now to save later is a wise use of scarce resources, and we will continue to do it whenever it seems appropriate. Planning for the future also involves maintaining a healthy level of reserves of all types to safeguard the council against future financial challenges. A council with inadequate reserves is at grave financial risk in these turbulent times. Finally, partnerships. The new government may be philosophically committed to public services, but when it comes to money, the NHS and defence are surely going to take priority over local government. That means councils, especially those with low levels of government funding must adapt to survive. Partnership working is an important part of that adaptation. Partnership working has an internal dimension. The different departments and directorates of the Council now view pressures on the organisation as corporate challenges that everyone can help to address. Increased corporate working is bringing great benefits, such as with the use of some of the Council's buildings for care leaver accommodation, which will help to control future costs. External partnerships are no less important. While other councils have turned in on themselves in response to financial pressure, we have looked outwards and embraced the opportunities that working with those beyond the organisation can offer. Partnership working involves pooling knowledge, expertise and resources with different bodies, such as other councils, the University of Reading, the voluntary and charitable sector, business, to maximise our ability to deliver better outcomes for the people we are here to serve. We're also working in a different kind of partnership with users of our services to make our spending more effective. The respected consultancy, Empower, recently rated the Council fifth, sorry George, you are going to hear it again, fifth in the country in terms of efficiency, measured by outcomes achieved per pound spent. This owes much to our strong financial management and commitment to innovation, but an analysis of Empower's top 10 councils shows that a common feature is a focus on partnership working. So, Mr. Mayor, I commend this budget to Council. While others have been driven to insolvency, we have kept our heads above water. We've had the courage to take tough but necessary decisions. Yet, even in these challenging times, we've looked beyond a narrowly cost-cutting approach. We've engaged in bold new initiatives to improve life for our residents and to ensure that the finances of the Council remain sound in the long term. Responsible, forward-looking and compassionate, this budget is one that I hope every councillor, regardless of party, will feel able to support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Conway. Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I would like to reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Imogen. I will shortly ask who else wishes to speak on these items, but before I do so, I would like to invite the Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, to speak to the budget reports. Councillor Jorgensen, you have 12 minutes to speak to these reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, when I sat down to write this speech, I decided to look back at what I'd said last year to compare notes. And you know what? So little has changed apart from the publication of the Lib Dem local plan. I could have used the same speech and it would have still been relevant today. Taxes are up, fees and charges are up, and services are being slashed. Money is being wasted day in and day out. Assets go underutilised and there is underinvestment in infrastructure. Opportunities are being squandered. And crucially, the wishes of our residents, the people who live with the impact of decisions of this administration, are regularly ignored. I ask residents, what's changed? What have the Liberal Democrats done for you? Are you better off? After less than 3 years in power, the Liberal Democrat administration is out of touch, out of ideas, and just clapped out. Where is the ambition? Where is the drive to look for new ideas to solve problems the borough's facing? It's just more of the same Liberal Democrat offer. Residents pay more and get less. The recent experience at California Crossroads in Finchamstead acts as a perfect metaphor for everything that's wrong with the approach taken by this administration, as demonstrated in this budget. What should have been an improvement to the road network that benefits motorists and pedestrians has turned out in execution to be anything but. The attempts to justify this rather than fix it border on the fanciful. Why do we need to have normal road marking, so the argument goes? Coloured leaves across the tarmac will confuse drivers into slowing down. And don't worry about pedestrians or guide dogs. When they see a car slowing down, they can just run into the road and hope the car coming the other way doesn't run them over. People who are not familiar with this scheme may think it's an exaggeration, but that's pretty much the case put forward by exec members. In common with the Liberal Democrat theme of wasting money wherever they can, all that cost £5.5 million. But it's the response to the criticism that is most emblematic of this administration. When a road safety audit commissioned by the council, with input from the police, concluded that the design of the scheme wasn't safe, the administration dismissed it. So many times we've heard Liberal Democrats say that they listen to experts until the experts come up with conclusions the ruling group don't like. A few weeks ago, the leader of the council wrote in Woking Today that the Conservatives are trying to whip up opposition to the local plan. This despite there being clear widespread dissatisfaction from residents about it and legitimate concerns about the level of traffic on unsuitable roads. This includes the development at Hall Farm, which will tip all the traffic from nearly 4,000 houses onto existing roads such as Lower Early Way or Mill Lane, Hatch Farm Way and Mole Road. Instead of engaging with these concerns, the Liberal Democrats discredit them. Whipping up opposition is an interesting train of thought. Perhaps it's even a Freudian slip. I wonder how he would explain Liberal Democrat councillors and candidates promising to stop the development at various sites, holding up placards and starting petitions, only for those same Liberal Democrat councillors to vote to allow these sites to go into the local plan. We see the same thing happening with California Crossroads. Even though 1,300 local people have said they want changes to the scheme, the Liberal Democrats tell everybody who'll listen that residents aren't actually unhappy. They just have to keep being told that they're unhappy. Never mind the fact that public anger has been widely reported across national and local media. According to the Lib Dems, California Crossroads is now the new Eden, with motorists and pedestrians alike gliding around with beaming smiles on their faces. How arrogant do you have to be confronted with such a waste of evidence that you need to change course, only to conclude that it's not you who are detached from reality, but the people who are wrong? Back in 23, when the Conservatives were in government, the Council's Liberal Democrat exec member for Finance said that she hoped there would be change of government when asked about the future of local authority funding. You can't help but wonder if she should have been careful what she wished for, given the £1 million cut. When the Conservatives were in government, the Council received an extra £2.3 million for the year 24-25. For next year, Labour have cut Woking Borough's funding by £1 million. If that wasn't enough, the Chancellor of the Exchequer has decided to clobber the Council with an increase in employers' national insurance contributions. As a result of this increase, when combined with the welcome increase in the national living wage, we'll see the Council's costs go up by £3.5 million, whilst the much vaunted public sector compensation for this extra tax is only £1.2 million, as Imogen said earlier. The Council will have to find millions more, not to spend on improving services, but on simply handing money back to the Labour government in London. It's interesting that the Labour group on the Council seem quite happy with this, that their residents' council tax are being used to bankroll others. We've got deep concerns about this budget. It's becoming increasingly clear the Liberal Democrat mismanagement of the Council's finances leave us in a powerless state. And after almost 3 years in power, the administration can't keep pointing fingers at everybody else. In previous years, the Lib Dems have repeatedly promised to ensure the health of the General Fund reserves, yet they see less about the other pockets of reserves they're habitually plundering. Last year, the Liberals took £4 million out of reserves to plug gaps. In this budget, the CFO report sets out the administration has taken a further £3 million out of reserves, again to balance the General Fund revenue account. These are not actions of a party in power delivering sustainable finances. Any household dipping into their savings account to cover day-to-day spending would recognise the issue. The administration should be producing long-term budgeting plans and look at the fundamentals of spending across the authority and ensuring that every penny is justified and is being spent efficiently. But instead, we're once again faced with Liberal Democrats' answer to everything. Charge people more for services, cut services, and raid the piggy bank to fill the gaps. We've repeatedly highlighted the unwillingness of the administration to make the most out of property owned by the council. This building has so much empty space that it continues to go unoccupied. Other councils also have office space that seems subject to requirements because of working from home, yet they're renting the local space out to businesses and other public sector buildings, whilst Wokingham whole floors of this building are gathering dust. At the same time, the executive are running away with the idea of transferring the council over to the old Marks and Spencer's building, whilst initially claiming it was fit for purpose and later admitting it will clearly need a lot of work at great cost. Last year, we warned that delays completing the flats at Carnival Pool were eroding expected profits that could be used to benefit residents. Now, on the third contractor, these flats are still not finished and losses are mounting. I recall when the contractor for Peach Place went bust, the Lib Dems, led by the current Lib Dem MP, were shouting from the rooftops that this was a disaster, even though we replaced the contractor within a couple of days. It's quite different now, total silence and mounting costs. We've had some success. Over the last 2 years in the Personnel Board, we've challenged officers about contracts and agency workers. I argued that the council needed to have one centralised framework for agency workers, rather than allowing it to be controlled by individual departments. As a result of this scrutiny and changes in control of spend, officers have saved $750,000 in agency worker fees. The Liberal Democrats have spent 3 years in this administration cutting back on services and hiking fees and charges. In power, we would increase the focus on stopping waste and make much better business case tracking. Just think of the benefits we could all deliver if we were in administration. The Liberal Democrats have a proven track record when it comes to decision making, which is putting it off. If they find a can on the ground, they prefer to kick it down the road. The result is always broken promises. We can see that by the capital budget carry-forwards, which are enormous. Here's just a selection from their recent manifestos. In 2023, they promised in their manifesto to keep a weekly waste service. Household waste bins are now collected every 2 weeks. The Liberal Democrats engage in wordplay by saying that the lorry turns up every week to collect your rubbish and another week to collect your recycling. That's a weekly waste service. That's not what residents understand. That is the same manifesto, by the way, that said they'd protect vital services. Residents can see right through this. Then we've got the promise to build housing that meets local needs rather than the desires of property developers. A different manifesto referring to local plans said, we will improve the plan, we will protect more green space. It took more than 2 years to get the local plan out of this administration. After claiming they couldn't make changes to the original draft, they managed to add Barkham Square and included almost 4,000 houses at Hall Farm, despite thousands of local people telling the council that it's not suitable and the access roads do not work. The Liberal Democrats said plans were being proposed for active travel corridors, and more will follow as we roll out the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, which we published in 1922. It's now 2025, and they're not actually delivering the walking and cycling infrastructure people want. Residents have been calling for a path and cycleway between Shinfield and Arborfield for ages. In the last 3 years, the Conservative ran the council, we delivered a cycleway more than a kilometre long on the A329 London Road, a new accessible ramp at Riverside Park, a cycleway linking Woodley to Winners Triangle Station, a shared use cycleway of 2.4 kilometres linking the A327 Reading Road to the A327 Eversley Road, and a shared footpath and cycleway as part of Phase 2 of the Winners Relief Road. What's happened since? The money continues to be spent, but precious little concrete benefit. It's also worth noting the Liberal Democrats said they'd take long-term decisions necessary to secure the council's finances for coming years. This is the same administration as exec member for finance told the press that the council could go bankrupt in 2 years and that there was a need for widespread cuts of services and staff redundancies, requiring 2 emails to be sent to staff providing reassurance that redundancies weren't on the cards. This is the Liberal Democrats' third budget in charge of this council, and we'd have hoped by now they would have got a grip. It's in nobody's interest, especially the residents we serve, to see money thrown away, council tax and charges climb higher and higher, and the quality services get worse. This is the situation we now find ourselves in. I believe most people who get elected to sit in this chamber have good intentions and simply want to do the best for people. But it's clear the current Liberal Democrat administration is not up to that. They can't keep control of the finances and they don't have any new ideas. What we've been presented with tonight is a patch job, not an ambitious but achievable plan for a financially sustainable council for the future. There are no local elections this year, though not because of Angela Rayner deciding to cancel them like other parts of the country. Unfortunately, this means that residents will have to endure another 3 months and year and 3 months of this Liberal Democrat administration kept in power thanks to Labour. These elections can't come soon enough and give residents the opportunity to call time on a Liberal Democrat administration that can't cut it. We will make our case to put their trust in the Conservatives because right now, Woking Borough needs new management.
Thank you, Councillor Jorgensen. I will now invite other members to speak. Members are asked to note that the usual rules of debate apply. Specifically, you are permitted to speak for 3 minutes. Please indicate by raising your hand if you wish to speak, and Democratic Services will provide a list to me. Keep your hands high, please. you okay with that, Priya? Can they put their hands down now? Do you want to put yeah, put your hands down, please. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Councillor Greg Bellow, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comments to Council are in relation to capital programme and strategy on page 57. For 25 years, I have had the privilege to live in Woodley, and I am very proud to say that I live in Woodley. Woodley is home to more than 35,000 people and is the largest town in Berkshire without its own railway station. Indeed, it's a great shame there isn't a direct bus route from Woodley to Winnersh Triangle and Twyford stations. If there was, a great number of commuters would get to work using public transport rather than adding to congestion by driving cars. On Monday, Thames Valley Buses will launch a new service between Maidenhead and Reading that stops in Knoll Hill, Twyford and Shepherd's Hill, but not Woodley. Wokingham Borough Council has been stating this as an improvement, but it snubs our town and denies thousands of residents an opportunity to use the Elizabeth line, train line, or use public transport to get a rail air bus from Winnersh Triangle. Woodley has Dinton pastures and fantastic parks like Woodford Park, which has won a national award. Woodley has many great events, including our fabulous annual carnival. This, like so many events in Woodley, is organised by Woodley people for Woodley people. Why? Because we have to do it ourselves and no one else is. Over the past decade, Wokingham Town has had £125 million lavished on it through regeneration projects in Peach Place, Elmsfield, Marketplace and Carnival. A new library, shops, restaurants, bars. There has even been a makeover for pavements around the town hall using expensive York stone that needs constant polishing to keep it clean. But Woodley, nothing. Apart from a shabby raised flower bed that people mock and have said it looks like a battlefield from Lord of the Rings movie. Over many years campaigning, residents in Woodley have said to me, we pay loads in council tax to Wokingham, but get nothing back. It's all spent in Wokingham Town. Whatever we as councillors feel in this chamber, that is the residents' perception that comes across. I must abstain on this budget because, yet again, looking at regeneration specifically, items for Woodley, it's just invisible to the borough, while more money is spent on Wokingham Town. This time to give Denmark Street a revamp, to add insult to injury, as my colleague Councillor Burgess has pointed out to me, Council is considering raising the cost of pavement cafe licences from £100 to £500, which will batter...
Can you wrap up, please,
Yep,
Greg?
I'll wrap up. So my concluding remarks are, I make a plea on behalf of the residents of Woodley that we are considered in a more favourable light for regeneration in future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dave Edmonds next, please.
When I reviewed this budget, one thing became immediately clear. The lack of financial control under the Liberal Democrats means our financial position is becoming dangerously precarious. There is no clear vision, no responsible planning, just a slow, reckless drift towards financial disaster. We cannot afford to sleepwalk off a financial cliff. So let's get back to basics. What is this council here for? I believe the purpose of this council is simple: to make life better for the residents who live here. That's why we pay our council tax, and that is what this budget should be trying to achieve. The Liberal Democrats took control in May 2022, inheriting a council that the Conservatives had steered safely through the COVID crisis. And yet, nearly 3 years later, we must ask, what have they done to improve our lives? Are our roads in better condition? No, they are worse than ever before. Do we still have weekly bin collections? No. The Liberals cut them fortnightly and restricted collections. Are our children getting the education they deserve? No. Ask the parents at Oakbank School, where yet another damning Ofsted report speaks for itself. And did they at least keep their promises to residents? No. They opposed the Hall Farm housing development to win votes, then betrayed that trust by supporting it in the local plan. So what have they done with your money? They spent £5.5 million turning this council into a national joke with the hideous, unsafe California Crossroads roundabout. What a waste. Meanwhile, they've coasted on the wise decisions made by the previous Conservative administration. Decisions like holding on to commercial assets, such as the Waitrose supermarkets in Woodley and Twyford, that continue to bring in vital revenue. So the question is, what would a Conservative administration do differently? We would change the entire approach, because tinkering around the edges isn't enough. We would scrap the wasteful, outdated Liberal Democrat approach to budgeting and move to a zero-based budgeting system where every cost is justified from the outset. We would benchmark council labour hours against both public and private sector standards to drive efficiency and cut waste. We would actually listen to residents, ensuring the council delivers on your priorities, not its own. And we would finally engage with the government to resolve the DSG override crisis, a financial threat the Liberals have allowed to hang over us like a sword of Damocles. Their inaction is unacceptable and inexcusable. This budget exposes a fundamental truth. The Liberal Democrats lack the expertise and the courage to make the hard decisions needed to protect this council from financial catastrophe. The choice before us is stark: continued mismanagement, waste and broken promises, or a Conservative administration that will restore competence, financial responsibility and a commitment to the people we serve. It's time to take back control, it's time to demand better, and it's time for real leadership.
Councillor Prue Bray, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Children's Services is facing a lot of challenges, but we also have a lot of progress to celebrate. Increasing costs, needs and complexity are impacting on demand for services, and money is very tight. And we are also faced with a huge amount of change in new burdens, duties and responsibilities. And amidst all this, our officer team have kept a focus on transforming and improving services for the long term. This will make us as financially sustainable as possible while pursuing improved outcomes for our children and young people. Now, I hope both Pauline and Dave are listening. We are opening children's homes and send units, and we are planning a post-16 send hub. We have one of the best records on early years in the country. We are providing increasingly good quality accommodation for our care leavers. We are working on better mental health support for our young people and on our respite offer for children with disabilities. And we are doing it, Pauline, within budget. There are two specific things I want to say on schools, and the first is about Oakbank. At last, the Anthem Trust are withdrawing from the school, and a new trust will be announced on the 6th of March. And I would like to thank everyone at the council and more widely who has helped to achieve this, and we will continue to do whatever we can to support the school as it moves towards what we all hope is a better future. The second thing is about the funding of Embrook's sixth form. I am aware that the opposition are seeking to stoke concerns that the funding may not be forthcoming. They have no grounds to do so other than a desire to land a blow on the Liberal Democrats. For the avoidance of doubt, I want to state very clearly that the Council is sticking to the terms of the agreement on the sixth form building that it reached with the Circle Trust in May 2024. Finally, there is the deficit in special educational needs funding. This sits in the dedicated schools grant, not directly on our books, although servicing the debt is costing us £2 million a year and still rising. The cumulative deficit since 2017, when I believe the Conservatives are running the council, has reached 38 million. We are doing everything we can to control it, but the situation remains challenging. We might be in a better state had the previous administration paid special educational needs more attention and planned for the future. But the root cause is many years of severe government underfunding across the whole country. We can only hope that the current government takes the necessary steps to sort it out that the previous government neglected to take, because it is beyond the ability of any council to solve this problem by itself.
Councillor Peter Harper, please.
Mr Mayor, when I spoke on the budget last year, I voiced my disappointment that the Council had failed to deliver many of the initiatives in the Climate Emergency Plan and were carrying over capital allocations to future years. Sadly, this year is no different. The capital investment to deliver renewable energy infrastructure, such as solar panels on car parks, schools and other council property, is still woefully underspent, meaning we are not making the progress on installing solar panels on Woking Borough Council buildings and car parks that we should be. The Barkham Solar Farm is still not delivered, and the second solar farm has yet to be confirmed, meaning we are losing the opportunity of the income from these projects that the Council so desperately needs. A key plank of the move to carbon zero is improving the energy efficiency of the Council's own buildings and operations. Last year, the Council carried over £2.8 million for this work and allocated a further £1.75 million, making a total of £4.5 million to be spent this year. But just £300,000 has actually been spent. This means the energy savings that would bring down the Council's running costs are not being realised. As a Council, we need to lead by example and reduce our energy usage. But these figures show we're not even investing money to deliver those savings. Mr Mayor, unspent capital is not something to be proud of because it shows a failure to deliver the projects that improve services for our residents. I hope, Mr Mayor, that I won't have to deliver the same speech next year. The MTFB contains a section titled Savings. Now, most people would understand savings to be a reduction in expenditure due to efficiencies in the way the Council operates. For example, there are IT efficiencies which will reduce our costs by £80,000 per year, or customer service efficiencies that will save £50,000 a year. But the Lib Dems have redefined savings to include increases in charges and costs for residents. In previous years, these increased charges have been itemised so they can be sure what they were, such as on-street parking charges or increases in off-street parking charges. This year, there is an ominous line item of £120,000 income generating opportunities. Will the Lib Dems come clean on what charges they are going to increase to make these savings? As the capital budget includes £750,000 for the introduction of paying for on-street parking spaces in town centres and locations near railway stations, we must assume that the motorist is going to be clobbered yet again.
Councillor Rachel Burgess, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First, I would like to thank the officers for the enormous amount of work that goes into the papers that we have before us this evening. Considering the economic legacy that's been inherited by the government, no one is naive enough to think there's a quick fix to the funding crunch facing all local authorities. However, it helps if the papers reflect the facts. The leader of the council has recently used his weekly newspaper column to call for a greater level of honesty in local politics, for facts, not fiction. Unfortunately, this sentiment doesn't appear to apply throughout the budget papers. The final funding settlement for Wokingham, recently announced, confirmed an increase in grant funding for Wokingham, and yet in tonight's executive papers, grant funding is incorrectly presented as we have heard, as being £1 million down on the previous year. Not once, not twice, but 5 times, and twice more in the council papers. The truth is, Wokingham's total grant funding wasn't cut. If you add up all the total grants this year, add up all the total grants next year, it's actually an increase by over £600,000, and I know because I've done it. And when we look at the council's core spending power, which includes expected council tax income as well, Wokingham ranks firmly in the middle among similar authorities in terms of available resources. Let's be clear, Wokingham's core spending power is set to rise by 6% for 25-26. That's according to the House of Commons Library. Local authority budgets are tough, but facts are important. There's certainly some positive projects and initiatives here that we welcome. The planned improvements in Wokingham Town Centre are encouraging, but as we've heard, meaningful financial backing for town centres appears to be solely focused on Wokingham. What about investment in Woodley, our second largest town? Speaking of towns, Councillor Ashwell rightly said at the January full council meeting that we need to nurture our high streets. And yet fees for tables and chairs on the highway, essentially pavement cafes, have soared by 250% for renewals and an astonishing 400% for new licences. How do such massive increases support the growth and the vibrancy of our town centres? When it comes to transport, we know there's real demand for bus services to Twyford, from Loddon Park and from North Wokingham. Yet instead of addressing this issue, we have £41,000, which continues to be allocated to signage costs for the Tory white elephant that is the Copped Beach Park and Ride. Why continue wasting money on a failed project instead of investing in services that people actually need? Why throw good money after bad? And finally, the spectre of new car parking charges hangs over our residents still. Despite the recent U-turn, the Lib Dem administration has given no long-term assurance that the new charges won't be imposed at Cantley Park and other areas. For Carnival Hub, there is a budget growth item here that states review access to free parking. There was never an intention to remove free parking at Carnival Pool. What exactly is being reviewed? Let's be clear, we should be making it easier and not harder for residents to take part in recreational activities that support their health and well-being. And we should remember that our recreational facilities are community assets, not merely revenue streams for the council to exploit. Thank you.
Councillor David Hare, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to talk about adult services and all we're doing and how we are facing the increasing problems of rising complexity and levels of demand in a financially challenged time. One of the things many people emphasise is how we are now working in partnership. That is, obviously, with the voluntary sector, we are funding to provide services and work with people before they get to adult services. But we're also working well with other departments across the council. An example of this is the excellent work with housing to provide appropriate specialist accommodation for the people who use our services. Another is our work on becoming a Marmot borough, which is a council-wide review looking at those who often get lost in the average of an influential borough. Likewise, our work with Social Care Future, working with people with lived experience to unlock a glorious ordinary lives. This has included training and paid opportunities for people with lived experience to be involved in the recruitment of our staff. Our residence reception pilot is a collaboration across the VCS and the ASC to provide drop-in community-based prevention targeted at areas of deprivation and lower engagement. We're also looking in the long term and making sure we invest to save whilst driving up the quality of care. So, Bluebell House will be fully occupied with 50 beds by the end of this financial year. It's been decorated and safety features like new fire escapes and a state-of-the-art nursing call bell system has been installed. Bluebell House is now a welcoming environment that offers high-quality care to local residents. It is thrilling the positive things I've heard about the staffing and the way the people living in Bluebell are respected, valued, and given appropriate independence. As a further investment to increase capacity in the local area, I can announce we have acquired another home in Burfield Common. This home is in better condition than Bluebell was when we bought it and takes 58 people when full. We're excited about this opportunity, and Optalis are working with staff, residents and families to ensure a smooth transition from the previous owners. This acquisition will support us to manage within our revenue budget, serving the taxpayers, while also making sure the people of this borough
get the excellent care and support they deserve in their final years. Thank you, and we say adult services are going places.
Councillor George Evans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This budget fails the most important test, delivering value for money for our residents. Instead of managing our resources wisely, this Liberal Democrat administration is relying on higher taxes, increased charges and short-sighted policies, all while failing to make the most of the assets we already have. This council controls a property portfolio valued in the hundreds of millions of pounds, an asset base that should be working for residents. Yet, instead of maximising its value, we see underused buildings, missed commercial opportunities and poor financial planning. These assets should be generating income to reduce the tax burden on residents, yet instead this administration prefers to take the easy route, raising council tax and increasing fees. Take Carnival Place, for example. These 55 flats should be providing a surplus, helping to strengthen our finances and support essential services. Instead, due to poor planning, the council is now likely to lose money on them. A key asset that should have been an income generator is now another financial burden, proving once again that this administration is failing to deliver value for money for our residents. And while these failures continue, residents are being asked to pay more. Higher council tax, increased fees, cuts to services. Rather than making the most of our property portfolio, this administration is choosing short-term, damaging policies, such as hiking parking charges in town centres and in our country parks. The council's own reports confirm that residents are changing their habits due to these costs. This means fewer visitors, lower footfall for our local businesses, and ultimately, less revenue. Even worse, this short-sighted approach undermines the revenue potential of assets like Dinton Pastures and California Country Park. Instead of ensuring these locations generate sustainable income through activities, events and hospitality, this administration has chosen to put up parking fees so that families and visitors are put off coming in the first place. Where is the value for money for our residents in that? This approach shows a lack of ambition, a lack of vision, and a lack of financial discipline. There is a better way forward, one that focuses on making the most of our resources instead of simply demanding more from residents. But this administration refuses to take it. The solution should be simple. Make better of what we already own. Instead, this administration continues to look the other way, choosing tax increases and over financial responsibility. This budget does not deliver value for money for our residents. It does not show competent management of our resources. It is yet another example of missed opportunities and wasted potential. I will not and cannot support it, and I urge other colleagues to reject it.
Councillor Adrian Betteridge, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This budget, like all recent ones, strives to balance the books in difficult times. But we know that we need to do more than just keep the lights on. And this includes investing in the future, and investing in the future of local travel. We have a growing community. We have to deal with climate change. And we must address the inequities in health and opportunity within our community. Now, developer contributions can pay for some of this, but cannot do it alone. Earlier, Councillor Jorgensen asked what is being delivered. Now, I hate to let the facts get in the way of a good argument, but she may recall that the Conservative government withdrew all the funding for active travel schemes late in their government. Funding they'd promised and announced many times over to meet the transformation targets they had given to our council. Without the money, these things can't happen. The new government has similar targets, but has yet to allocate the unprecedented funding which they initially promised. However, there is some good news. Just last week, we heard that Wokingham Borough will receive £862,000 ring-fenced to invest in walking and cycling. This is more than any other unitary authority in Berkshire. We are getting more because for the second year running, we've been assessed as having more visible local leadership and support than the majority of local authorities. And in fact, only 6 councils in the country were assessed higher. We're not alone in Berkshire. Reading was also assessed at the same level. Reading has had a plan for walking and cycling transformation since 2020 and benefited from having this when funding was available in those early years. Sadly, Wokingham had to wait for the Lib Dem administration to arrive before we could have a plan for the same. The need to modernise our local travel is urgent. We need to invest in sustainable local travel by bus, on foot, by bike, as well as making the roads safe for all. We need a lot more investment to do this, which sadly isn't available at the moment. But, by our assessment, it's been shown that this administration has the leadership and the will to do so. Thank you.
Councillor Shahid Yunus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Somebody asked Nelson Mandela a question: what is the difference between a politician and a leader? And he said the politician, his mental horizon is only until the next election. He only wants to do things which will win him the next election, yet the leader is the one who actually makes difficult decisions and which will pay dividends in the long run. But yet I see 325-page document. Where is the specifically investment purely for innovation, new ways of doing things, new solutions, and which perhaps will give us the efficiencies in the down the line. In other words, investment to save. Yes, I've heard some comments before. That is not what I'm talking about. Specifically, if it is there, I was difficult to finding it. This shows the lack of creativity, lack of innovation, lack of thinking outside the box. We are in 2025. It seems the approach to solving the problems of the current 21st century is still of the 20th century. Our residents are clobbered with high taxes, car park charges are going up, and bin collections have been reduced, potholes increased, infrastructure is crumbling, and the number of other services are going down. Yet no new solutions, no creative thinking, no innovation, no imagination from the current leadership. I consider this budget unfit for the challenges that the Council faces currently and also in the future. It doesn't provide value for money, hence I'll be voting against it, and I urge others to vote against this budget. Thank you.
Councillor Martin Alder, please.
Good evening, everybody. Well, we all know that times are difficult. I mean, recovering from 14 years of George Osborne's complete mess up of the economy on just a disastrous. I was too young. So anyway, we are where we are after 14 years. Defence is in a disastrous state, the NHS isn't doing well, and we are sharing the effects of a 16 billion backlog in road maintenance. The money that your previous Chancellor generously donated of 500 million shared between the total number of authorities in the UK made no impact whatsoever on that. So anyway, not everything is bad news, but I could tell Pauline that she's probably short of builders to do things lately because of the effect of Brexit, which of course did leave a walloping great 40 billion hole in the tax revenue of the government. So of course there isn't much money to come from the central government to help us because it's not there. So let's move on to what's happening now. There are some good stories, and I listened to Greg's statement about bus services with interest. I think on this side of the house, so to speak, we're very keen on doing things. Now, we can't do everything, and I'd love to be able to wave a magic wand and get the buses running through the right places at the right time. But life is a compromise, but I think, you know, if we're going to talk together, we can make things happen. I'd love to see a bus service to Twyford Station from Woodley, but sadly, they're all very expensive to start. It's roughly a six-figure sum to subsidise a new route start-up for a 12-month period. We have had some good changes, though. We've the Leopard 3 in different parts of the borough. Leopard 3 is increased every 15 minutes between Reading and Shinfield and extending to Arborfield. And the frequency has been adjusted to try and match demand and make sure the money goes as far as it can. December in 2024, we had the time restrictions on use of disability bus passes, plus the user and the companion. They were removed, the time restrictions, so you could now use the buses more completely than you could before. It's really quite good for them, and it means they can get out and about, and I'm hope that they have all benefited greatly from that. In January, we put more buses on the line 4 and 4A route, increasing to every 15 minutes during the Monday to Saturday and Saturday period. Sundays, the frequency is adjusted again according to demand to make those grants go as far as possible to get the best service you can. In January, the national bus fare cap has gone from £2 to £3. It's still the best value ticket for those travelling longer distances occasionally, such as Twyford to Henley, or at Christmas, I went from Twyford to Henley to look at the things, and the kids loved it. Well, we continued on to Marlow, so it was even better. But there are local journeys where a regular journey where you perhaps can get a better deal, but check with your bus operator if that's what you want to do. Registered changes coming up.
Martin, can you start wrapping up, please?
Okay, we've got some more changes coming up with the 850. The 127 was talked of earlier. That will create a mini network, really, centred around Twyford, but there's more that we can do.
Time, please.
I'll stop now, and if you want to read more, I'll put a printed answer up for you.
Councillor Rebecca Margetts, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Over the past year, the residents of Woking have expected leadership, vision and competent governance. Unfortunately, what they have received instead is indecision, inaction and missed opportunities from the Liberal Democrats. They have had the responsibility of leading this council, yet their record continues to fall short of the expectations of those they are elected to serve. Let's take the White Ribbon Strategy, a crucial initiative aimed at tackling violence against women and girls. In February 23, I attended a briefing on what was presented as an ambitious plan, providing ambassadors, training, quality assurance and a steering group to drive real change. However, a year later, what tangible progress has been made? While raising awareness is important, it is not a substitute for action. Taxpayers deserve transparency and measurable outcomes when their money is spent, yet attempts to seek accountability on this were met with criticism. The question remains, what material difference has this made to the lives of women in Wokingham? For 2 consecutive years now, the Household Support Grant, designed to assist the most vulnerable, has been underspent, with 150,000 now unused. Yet we are told that Wokingham is underfunded and that difficult times lie ahead. Why has this administration failed to ensure that available government funding reaches those who need it most? A well-run council should not just identify challenges, it must act to address them. We have also seen broken promises at the national level. Last year, Labour pledged that women's health would never be neglected again. Wes Streeting assured the public that Labour would prioritise women's health care as part of NHS reforms. Yet by January this year, these commitments had already been abandoned. Key targets for women health hubs across the country were quietly dropped, leaving female patients overlooked once again. Here in Wokingham, we only have 1 trial of women's health hub at a GP surgery, with its 6-month funding is now being withdrawn, while every other area in the Bob region has secured continued provision. Where is the voice of this Liberal Democrat administration in demanding fair treatment for Wokingham's women? Wokingham residents as a whole do not get a fair deal with Bob. Mr Mayor, governance is about delivering for residents, not just making announcements or presenting plans that never come to fruition. The people of Wokingham deserve an administration that is proactive, accountable and capable of managing resources effectively. This budget should reflect a commitment to better stewardship of public funds, meaningful support for those in need and a determination to ensure that Wokingham is not left behind. This budget fails to do this, so I cannot support it.
Councillor Rachel Bishop-Firth, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wanted to say a few words about how, in these very difficult times, when our budgets are under huge pressure, our partnerships with a variety of partners mean that we can deliver so much more to Wokingham Borough residents than would otherwise be possible. From adult social care to tackling poverty, and from town councils to charities to individual volunteers, Wokingham Borough Council is building strong relationships with the voluntary and community sector and with other partners such as town and parish councils. Together, we're delivering new solutions, innovation and better ways of working for our residents. To give a few examples of what this looks like, we commission adult social care prevention services from charities. This means that we are able to offer our residents excellent and affordable prevention services which promote independence. This stable contracting position helps our partners with the sustainability of their organisations. The Hardship Alliance is working to distribute the government's Household Support Fund. By working together in this way, we've been able to target the money to those who need it most. Our partners have also been able to offer residents information on how to maximise their incomes and signpost to other services. And I'm very happy to reassure Councillor Rebecca Margetts that we have plans in place to ensure all of the money is spent on those who need it most. In 2022, the Liberal Democrat administration chose to allocate £250,000 to a hardship fund for longer-term projects to alleviate poverty in Wokingham. By providing seed funding to get projects off the ground, we've been able to turn relatively small investments into a long-term benefit for the community. For example, seed funding from the Hardship Fund helped share the food bank and first aids to launch the first community pantry in Wokingham. This provides support for those who need longer-term help with affording food for themselves and their families. Individual volunteers working in Wokingham Borough Libraries support members of the public who need help completing forms to access the benefits they're entitled to. Town and parish councils have helped by signposting members of the public to sources of help, including Wokingham Borough Council's online resources for those living in hardship. Working in partnership with the various organisations, we've been running a trial of resident receptions in 4 locations across the borough. These are regular drop-in sessions for the local community to seek advice and support across various topics. 105 residents in total have been supported during the initial phase of this trial. Nearly half of those who approached a residents' reception found additional support beyond their original request. We'd like to thank our partners and parish councils for their help in delivering these sessions. This includes Wokingham Without and Swallowfield Parish Councils, WBC's Adult Social Care and Community Engagement Teams, Children and Family Charities, Community Health Checkers, Involved Community Services and Citizens Advice. Without these and other partnerships, we could not as a council provide the support which we do to our residents. A huge thank you to all of our volunteers and partners, and of course to the officers who work with them. Thank you very much.
Moses Iyung-Gwemwa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A good incremental budget starts with previous budgets and baseline, makes incremental adjustment for expected changes such as inflation, new projects, provides justification to ensure transparency and accountability, and includes contingency to cater for unexpected changes. While there are many items contained in this budget, I will use the time available to address observed inconsistencies in the forecast savings and growth in some aspects of the budget, which could lead to further escalation of the DSG deficit. The budget provides no clear strategy and defined outputs to guarantee reduction of home-to-school transport expenditure. Recent MTFPs dating back to 2023-24 have seen projected growth in the HTS home-to-school transport, while projected savings are either static or projected to decline. The breakdown in the current medium-term financial plan shows that the anticipated savings are only in 2025-2026 financial plan and not in subsequent years. While the source of the growth forecast may be unknown, it is curious that there are no anticipated savings subsequent years. One would have expected savings not to be time-limited over the medium term if policies continue to be implemented and planned infrastructure are delivered on time. It is counterintuitive that alternative arrangements, including capital investment in new science facilities, are contemplated. Yet the home-to-school transport is forecast to increase to about £855,000 in the medium-term financial plan. This may indicate that there is no confidence that the capital projects will be delivered on the estimated delivery dates. The lack of confidence in the The lack of confidence in the project savings may not be unconnected with a lack of defined spend requirements underpinning the budget, as the Council is still in the process of developing the spend sufficiency statement, which is currently at draft stage and yet to be considered by the Executive. It is anticipated that 2 primary spend units will be opened in September 2025 and another 2 in September 2026. Using the Phase 1 primary spend unit to be located at Rastock Primary School as an illustration, it is unlikely that this project will be delivered on time, judging from delays with previous projects, as it is still at planning approval stage. The situation will be exacerbated if 2 of the special schools to be built by the DFE and anticipated in 2028 experience further delays. Delay in implementation of Mbrook expansion program and delays in Bohund, tentatively now due to be delivered in 2028, could have repercussions for mainstream secondary education provision. In response to one of my email inquiries, it was stated, and I quote, "A commitment was made in May 2024 to include Mbrook in scheme in the 2026-27 medium-term financial plan, subject to certain provisions being met, and this commitment still stands," unquote. However, though this program is not contained in the 2026-2027 medium-term financial plan, there is the nebulous presumption that it's likely that the assisted works will be delivered for September 2027.
Can you wrap up, please?
In summary, and contrary to the projected savings contained in the budget, the CFO report does not suggest the DSG deficits will drop on current plans trajectory. According to CFO's report, latest forecasts show that despite the additional interventions and government funding, demand has increased significantly beyond initial expectations, with the number of mitigated EHCP forecasts being hit by November 2024. This casts further doubt on the integrity of the growth and savings forecast that underpin the budget.
Councillor Stephen Newton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councils across the country are battling trying to maintain services against tight financial pressures. One might think that all councils are engaging in this fight on an equal basis, but that is very far from the truth. Wokingham is yet again due to receive the lowest level of settlement funding from the government. If Wokingham received the average level of funding, we would have about an extra £55 million available next year. If Wokingham received the same level as the highest funded unitary authority, we would have an extra £141 million next year. Substantial increases. So how are our Berkshire peers faring? Wokingham will receive just £87.38 per head next year, whereas West Berkshire will get £125.70, Bracknell £165.67, and Reading £210.66. Despite this, Wokingham still has one of the lowest council tax rates in Berkshire and delivers fantastic value for money for residents. Across the country, local authorities are issuing Section 114 notices, effectively declaring bankruptcy, leading to asset sales, service cuts, and significant increases in council tax. According to ITV, an additional 63 English councils could go under within a year, and a further 127 in the next 5 years. So what sets councils apart that are getting through this financial crisis compared to those that are not? The key difference is a strong and trusted relationship between the ruling party and the directors and officers of the council. The last peer review identified how this relationship had improved significantly since the Liberal Democrats took control of this council, and the benefit is clear to see in our finances and service delivery over the last 3 years. If Wokingham's residents want to play their part in ensuring that Wokingham does not go bankrupt, they should do one simple thing. Vote for strong financial discipline and controls, not risky speculative investments and contracts that fail to deliver. Vote for a team that delivers effective change, whether that be in waste management, care home and special educational needs provision, improving our environment, protecting green spaces, providing more affordable and social housing and higher environmental standards in new home builds. Vote for a team that delivers value for money through new contracts and service provision, and who are willing to take the tough decisions that are needed to steer this council through the challenging years ahead. To put it simply, to secure Wokingham future, residents should vote Liberal Democrat at every opportunity.
Councillor Charles Margetts, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's obviously our role to scrutinise the budget, but what we want to do is where the administration makes sound decisions, we'll support them. We support the refurbishment of Suffolk Lodge. We also support the decision that led to this to abandon the overly expensive care home and housing project at Toutley. However, we must talk about the finances behind it. Officers have told me the council ran up £1 million in design costs for this abandoned scheme. When I questioned this, the officer explained to me as a justification that £10 million we raised from selling the land because it now has planning permission. This was known in 2023, but there's no plan to put this on the market till late 2025. This is unacceptable. Had the sale been completed, we could be already investing this money in vital projects. This lack of urgency is a pattern. The sixth form at Bowhunt is years behind. The promised expansion at Embrook School has seen no progress despite the fact that we're now 6 months from its original opening date. The 2024 letter the lead member referred to did make that commitment, however it caveated it, saying it would be based on a place assessment which is currently underway. That's my understanding. I don't think I'd be so dismissive of a petition which has been signed by over 1,500 residents and raised by local parents within a week. The most serious issue in the budget is the SEND funding crisis. The DSG, as you've heard, has surged from 10 million in 2022 to just under 40 million today. While the government's guarantee protects local taxpayers from this deficit until 2026, the interest payments, as you've heard, confirmed at £2 million a year, fall on the Wokingham taxpayer. The council outlined a plan in 2023 to address this issue by repurposing underused primary school capacity and expanding its own SEND provision, which again we support. So far, there's been an expansion of Addington School and a couple of small schemes. Plans for delivery of new SEND units on a big scale remain years away from opening, and the deficit continues to grow. Last week, the Director of Children's Services informed us that a borough-wide SEND need analysis is in progress. The work is welcome, but it should have taken place in 2023. How can we understand the capacity gap and the needs of residents without this exercise? We need bold and urgent acceleration of the SEND capacity expansion. The council has agreements with developers to build 6 new primary schools in the local plan. We should be negotiating with these developers to make this SEND provision. There's also the 10 million I referred to from the land at Toutley. This should be sold ASAP and the money reinvested. Mr. Mayor, there's too much hesitation and too little action. The SEND deficit has ballooned, placing an increasing financial burden on the council. It's the responsibility of this administration to ensure every taxpayer pound is used effectively. Challenges need to be met with decisive action, not deferred until the financial consequences become this big and this damaging. Given the scale of the challenges ahead, this budget does not go nearly far enough in addressing the financial risks to this council and ensuring that urgent needs and services are delivered. For this reason, I can't support it and will be voting against it.
Councillor Rob Comer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to talk a little about some of the projects in the category of Invest to Save. I've been very pleased to see the council investing some of its infrastructure monies in such projects as that on London Road in my ward. Here the council has bought and is extending and modifying a property in order to provide homes for children leaving care. This is aimed at providing purpose-designed and well-equipped homes for young people as they begin to transition from being fully in care to becoming adults in our community. This enables them to prepare for independent living as a stepping stone in the process. And being interested in this as a ward member, I met with the officers involved and was shown what they are using the capital's capital to buy, how they're planning to extend this property, and exactly what they're planning to create. And armed with this knowledge, I was able to attend a public meeting aimed at local residents to reassure them about what was being planned in their locality, to show them the care being taken and assuage any concerns that they may have had. And I have to say that I was very reassured by how supportive many of the locals were. And the reason I'm mentioning this in a debate on the budget is because of how good an example this is of the use the Council is making of its current investment in infrastructure. In my view, this is a textbook example of how well one can use capital resources. Here, the Council is both improving the services we offer and at the same time reducing the cost to the Council of doing so. A real win-win in any measure. And this is not the only example of this, just in my ward alone. So I'm optimistic that the Council is currently taking a very sensible approach to the use of public money for infrastructure investments. As you heard a short while ago from David Hare, the Council has just completed the acquisition of another care home, and I think that, and these homes for our young people currently in care, are both examples of how the Council is delivering on its obligation to provide statutory services, but doing so in a way that is improving those services, whilst also reducing the cost of their delivery, thereby getting an excellent bang for its buck in so doing. I support this budget and urge you to do the same.
Councillor Joseph Barley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, residents in my ward will view tonight's proceedings with political apathy and little hope. In Barkham and Arborfield, we live and breathe the consequences of delayed projects and fiscal mismanagement on a daily basis. Beyond the budget, as time moves on, we continue to see construction costs skyrocket, and meanwhile any funding that we do have is seen to be swallowed elsewhere. We've waited years for our new community centre to be delivered. As months turn into years, the only thing that seems to change is the estimated cost and time of completion, kicking the needs of residents further down the road as delays beget delays. In Finchwood Park, there is a more than understandable frustration towards the incompetence of this council after it was realised that the SIL money that was meant to fund their new sports hub had already been spent, putting their new facilities that they were promised at risk. Now, these are just a couple of many examples where our residents have been let down by those from above. This is why our residents' expectations have been set embarrassingly low, and it is why we now fear another major project could become a black hole for council cash if residents are burdened with more delays for years to come. I'm of course talking about the Barkham Solar Farm project. Now, the solar farm is a significant capital project, though that does mean any delays in construction, connection, and completion could incur significant increases in costs that would ultimately be borne by residents. Public projects of a complex nature have a universal perception that delays and overspending aren't just likely, they're guaranteed. And our residents' perception of this is only strengthened by the formally mentioned failures of this council that they are forced to live with every day. I cannot support this budget, especially because at this current time there is a rightful concern that within my ward that this administration has not prepared itself for the possibility, no matter the likelihood, of the solar farm being delayed and its associated consequences. I'll therefore call on this administration to give residents, at a bare minimum, a guarantee that the solar farm will be built on time and within budget. After being continually let down through delay, dithering and increased costs, it's the absolute least they deserve. Thank you.
Due to time constraints, I now move to Imogen, who has the right for 3 minutes, and then Stephen afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me just, where are we? Okay, we've heard a lot of things this evening that have been very interesting. I'm not sure which parts of anything in Pauline's speech are relevant to this council's budget. She seems to have missed the basic problem that we've inherited from the previous administration and the country's finances from the previous Conservative government. I'm not sure where she thinks the magic money tree is, and it fails to acknowledge the scale of the problems in adult social care and children's services, a problem that they failed to fix when they were in control and their government certainly didn't fix when they ran the government. Instead, they were hell-bent on delivering Brexit, which I failed to see any benefits from, and it certainly has not contributed to the problems in the building sector, which has very likely affected the completion of the flats at Carnival Pool. You can't have it all. An example in terms of the council's property is when the Lib Dems took control of this council, the Rubra building was standing empty and costing us over £200,000 a year in business rates and maintenance. We immediately let it out to one of our charity partners, and it stopped being a property that is a drain. This building, Chute End, was empty and running on full size at full cost, considerable cost when we took it over. Closing part of it has saved us money. I have many times heard the Conservatives complain that it is underused and a waste. In many ways I agree, but they have not brought forward a single suggestion or anyone who wants to rent any part of this building. I feel they are living in a world that is really no demand for old office blocks anymore. And we need to look at making these buildings and things into things that we do need, which is what has happened with the old library, which will become a new send hub. The points are being made here by the opposition should have been made in the autumn when the budget was being shaped through our scrutiny processes and when there was time to amend things. That is what scrutiny processes are for, and to ensure that things do not get missed. All of the great ideas for innovation, investor-save schemes, based budgeting should have been put forward at overview and scrutiny. The SEND funding crisis was mentioned for several of our Conservatives, particularly the DSG, or Dedicated School Grant, was not addressed when the Conservatives were in government, and nothing was done when the Conservatives were in control of this council. So I would believe what they say at your peril. Next week, I will be responding to the government consultation on local authority funding reform, because the current government formula is not working for Wokingham, and it's not fair to our residents. In this coming year, we received over £1 million less in our government grant, and we lost money on the national insurance increases. While we can manoeuvre a little in the short term, I can only hope that this government will listen and respect what it really costs for councils to continue to provide the services that our residents need. And I will verily say I will give the Labour government a chance to try. Above it all, it is important to understand that this budget is all about how we slice up the currently diminishing cake of our council funding from year to year. Many councils are in trouble, but not us. And it is due to prudent management and a good relationship with our officers and a willingness to look and make difficult and unpopular decisions. That is why we have a balanced budget in front of us. Thank you.
Hold on. Before we move to a recorded vote, the leader, Stephen Conway, has the right to reply. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Where do I begin? The Conservatives seem to live in a fantasy world. Their irresponsibility would be breathtaking were it not by now all too familiar. It would be amusing were it not so disappointing. They protest at ways of saving money, yet come up with no viable alternatives. They claim that we shouldn't increase the council tax or the government cap, yet they did so themselves when they ran the council. In a far more favourable financial environment.
Hold on, Stephen. Just hold on a second. Pauline?
Point of personal explanation, we did not say that we would not increase the council tax to the cap. We never said that at all. I never said that. None of the Conservatives said that. And if you would give us a free vote on each of the individual bits of the budget, we'd prove that.
That's a helpful clarification, given that you told us you were opposing taxes going up. Well, I'm glad we've got that clarification. You're actually in support of they're going up. I have to say, you attack many things, such as California Crossroads and the local plan, that you actually started when you were in control of the council and progressed while you were in control of the council until such time as you left control of the council.
Point of personal explanation.
And I have to say, there's no personal explanation.
Oh, there is.
I'm not mentioning you.
It's personal to me because he's accusing me of having progressed.
I'm not accusing you of anything.
I was the executive member for Highways at the time.
Pauline, please sit down.
We did not progress it. We did not approve it.
Stephen, continue, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have to say also, I do wonder what the California Crossroads and the local plan have got to do with a budget debate. And I also wonder whether all Conservative members present this evening support some of the comments made on the local plan. You, as an opposition, raise points of objection now, but I have to say remain silent on them during the overview and scrutiny process in which you were involved. It's difficult to conclude, other than that the arguments the Conservatives are putting forward are nothing more than party political posturing. But even the Conservatives have the chance to redeem themselves, and to assist them, I want to focus on why the budget should be supported. It seeks, in very difficult financial circumstances, to help those who need help most. It contains measures that will improve the lives of many of our residents, and it seeks to ensure the Council's continued financial viability, without which we can do nothing good and worthwhile for our community. Compassion, community, and commitment to sound finance have shaped this budget. If these matter to you, as they matter to my colleagues and to me, you should put thoughts of party advantage out of your minds and vote for this budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Conway. We will now move to a recorded vote on the recommendations contained in each of the 4 budget reports. Please note that members do not have to request a recorded votes on these items, as recorded vote is a requirement for all motions on the budget. First of all, we have the recommendations contained in the Housing Revenue Account 20... Sorry, Pauline, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to request, although I know it's going to be refused, but for the record, I would like to request a split vote on item 100.4, points 1, 2 and 3. Because we were quite happy to support the council tax levels, but we do not want to vote for the MTFP.
So, I will take advice on this. Just hold on a second. Yeah. Pauline, the advice from Graham, the CFO, is that that is not possible. All the votes...
It was done last year and it has been done before.
Last year is not necessarily a precedent that we have to follow. This year, I've been informed by the CFO this is not possible, and we will follow the CFO's advice. Thank you. So, the first item is the Housing Revenue Account Budget 2025-26. On page 45, recommendations 1 through 7. I request that the Chief Executive, Susan, takes a vote.
So please can you indicate for, against or abstention? So Councillor Alawat?
For.
Councillor Ainsley?
For.
Councillor Akhtar?
For.
Councillor Alder?
For.
Councillor Andrea?
For.
Councillor Barley?
For.
Councillor Bellow?
For.
Councillor Betteridge?
For.
Councillor Bishop Firth?
For.
Councillor Bray?
For.
Councillor Bruno Walker?
For.
Councillor Burgess?
For.
Councillor Comer?
For.
Councillor Conway?
For.
Councillor Cook?
For.
Councillor Edmonds?
For.
Councillor Evans?
For.
Councillor Freeney?
For.
Councillor Gilder?
For.
Councillor Glover?
For.
Councillor Gray? Councillor Harding?
For.
Councillor Hare?
For.
Councillor Harper?
For.
Councillor Inyangamvana?
For.
Councillor Jamthi?
For.
Councillor Jewell?
For.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen?
For.
Councillor Charles Magetz?
For.
Councillor Rebecca Magetz?
For.
Councillor Mather?
For.
Councillor Montgomery? Councillor Monroe?
For.
Councillor Nagella?
For.
Councillor Nagra?
For.
Councillor Newton?
For.
Andy
For.
Councillor Rance.
For.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Solomon.
For.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
For.
Councillor Wayne Smith.
For.
Councillor Srinivasan.
For.
Councillor Swaddle.
For.
Councillor Turtle.
For.
Councillor Wayhill.
For.
Councillor Eunice.
For. Thank you very much. Do I need to say that's carried?
Yes.
That's carried, thank you. We now move on to the recommendations contained in the Capital Programme and Strategy 2025-28 report on page 57, recommendations 1 through 5. I request now that the Chief Executive takes a recorded vote.
Councillor Alowat.
Against.
Councillor Ainsley.
For.
Councillor Akhtar.
Against.
Councillor Alder.
For.
Councillor Andrea.
For.
Councillor Barley.
Against.
Councillor Bellow.
Abstain.
Councillor Betteridge.
For.
Councillor Bishop Firth.
For.
Councillor Bray.
For.
Councillor Bruno Walker.
For.
Councillor Burgess.
Abstain.
Councillor Comer.
For.
Councillor Conway.
For.
Councillor Cook.
For.
Councillor Edmonds.
Against.
Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Freeney.
Abstain.
Councillor Gilder.
Against.
Councillor Glover.
For.
Councillor Gray.
Abstain.
Councillor Harding.
For.
Councillor Hare.
For.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Inyen-Gumvana.
Against.
Councillor Jamthi.
For. For.
Councillor de Jong. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Charles Magetz.
Against.
Councillor Rebecca Margetts.
Against.
Councillor Mather.
For.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Monroe.
Against.
Councillor Nigella.
Abstain. Abstain.
Councillor Newton.
For.
Councillor Andy
For.
Councillor Rance.
Against.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Solomon.
Against.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
For.
Councillor Wayne Smith.
Against.
Councillor Srinivasan.
Against.
Councillor Swaddle.
Against.
Councillor Turtle.
Against.
Councillor Wayhill.
Abstain.
Councillor Eunice.
Against.
Carried, yeah.
That's carried, thank you. I would like to move on to the recommendations in the Treasury Management Strategy 2025-28 report on page 97, recommendation 1. I request again that the Chief Executive takes a recorded vote.
Councillor Alowat.
Abstain.
Councillor Ainsley.
For.
Councillor Akhtar.
Abstain.
Councillor Alder.
For.
Councillor Andrea.
4.
Councillor Barley.
Abstain.
Councillor Bello.
4.
Councillor Betteridge.
4.
Councillor Bishop Firth.
4.
Councillor Bray. 4. Councillor Brunel Walker.
4.
Councillor Burgess.
4.
Councillor Comer.
4.
Councillor Conway.
4.
Councillor Cook.
4.
Councillor Edmonds.
Abstain.
Councillor Evans.
Abstain.
Councillor Freeney.
4.
Councillor Gilder.
Abstain.
Councillor Glover.
4.
Councillor Gray.
4.
Councillor Harding.
4.
Councillor Hare.
4.
Councillor Harper.
Abstain.
Councillor Inyan-Gumvana.
Abstain.
Councillor Jamthi.
4.
Councillor Jewell.
4.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Abstain.
Councillor Charles Magetts.
Abstain.
Councillor Rebecca Magetts.
Abstain.
Councillor Mather.
4.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Munro.
Abstain.
Councillor Nagala.
4.
4.
Councillor Newton.
4.
4.
Councillor Rance.
Abstain.
Councillor Rowland.
4.
Councillor Solomon.
Abstain.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Bay.
4.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Bay.
4.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
4.
Abstain.
Councillor Srinivasan.
Abstain.
Councillor Swaddle.
Abstain.
Councillor Turtle.
Abstain.
Councillor Wayhill.
4.
Councillor Eunice.
Abstain. That motion is carried. Thank you. I'd like to move on to recommendations contained in the medium-term financial plan 2025-28, which includes the revenue budget submission 2025-26 on page 149, recommendations 1 through 3. I need to bring to members' attention that this item includes some supplementary information which has previously been circulated. I request that the Chief Executive takes a recorded vote. Thank you.
Councillor Alawat.
Against.
Councillor Ainsley.
4.
Councillor Akhtar.
Against.
Councillor Alder.
4.
Councillor Andrea.
4.
Councillor Barley.
Against.
Councillor Bello.
Abstain.
Councillor Betteridge.
4.
Councillor Bishop Firth.
4.
Councillor Bray.
4.
Councillor Brunel Walker.
4.
Councillor Burgess.
Abstain.
Councillor Comer.
4.
Councillor Conway.
4.
Councillor Cook.
4.
Councillor Edmonds.
Against.
Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Freeney.
Abstain.
Councillor Gilder.
Against.
Councillor Glover.
4.
Councillor Gray.
Abstain.
Councillor Harding.
4.
Councillor Hare.
4.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Inyan-Gumvana.
Against.
Councillor Jamthi.
4.
Councillor Jewell.
4.
Councillor de Jong. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Charles Magetts.
Against.
Councillor Rebecca Magetts.
Against.
Councillor Mather.
4.
Councillor Montgomery.
4.
Councillor Munro.
Against.
Councillor Nagala.
Abstain. Abstain.
Councillor Newton.
For.
Councillor Andy
For.
Councillor Rance.
Against.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Solomon.
Against.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Bay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Bay.
For.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
For.
Councillor Wayne Smith.
Against.
Councillor Srinivasan.
Against.
Councillor Swaddle.
Against.
Councillor Turtle.
Against.
Councillor Wayhill.
Abstain.
Councillor Eunice.
Abstain. Against, so against. Just checking. Thank you, that's carried. Now we move on to the review of allocation of seats to political groups following the Winnersh by-election. I understand Councillor Stephen Conway is proposing this report. Is that correct? Thank you.
It is, sir.
Do you have
Chair,
a seconder?
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Prue. Stephen, would you like to speak to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't take very long. This report is in the supplementary paper that I hope you've picked up. This review follows the election of Chetna to the council as the new borough councillor for Winnersh, and a reallocation of committee places has been necessary, and the new distribution before you reflects a proper application of political proportionality. I would just draw attention to one item in the, that wasn't in the, I think, original agenda pack, and that relates to an appointment to an outside body, the Wokingham Job Support Centre. I think we have to have a vote on that because there are two nominations. I think the other changes are not necessarily ones we need to vote on because they are simply in the application of political proportionality. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And that's my understanding as well, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. Does any member wish to speak against the report? No, in that case, let's move to a vote on this item. All those for this report, please raise your hands. Sorry, let me restate that, sorry. All of those in favour of recommendations 1 through 4, please raise your hand. Yep. Thank you very much. Those against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you very much. Yes, moving on to the recommendation for the Wokingham Job Support Centre. Before we move to the vote on that, I need to raise the fact that Lou Timlin is detailed as both a member and a substitute in the ONS Management Committee. This is an error. The nomination is for Lou to be a member of the ONS Management Committee. Taking this into account, oh, sorry, we've already voted on this. Apologies. I'm not going to redo the vote. Sorry. I would like to turn to recommendation 5, which relates to the appointment to the Wokingham Job Support Centre. Councillors will see that there are 2 nominations for this appointment as set out in Appendix 2 of the supplementary agenda. I will call each nominee in alphabetical order, and you will then need to vote. All of those in favour of Councillor Greg Bellow, please raise your hands. Thank you. All of those in favour of Councillor Rebecca Margetts, please raise your hand. Thank you. Councillor Greg Bellow is duly appointed to the Wokingham Job Support Centre. We now move on to item 102, update to procurement and contract rules in the Constitution. I understand that Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay is proposing that. Is that correct? Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Stephen. Imogen, would you like to speak to the report, please?
Sure. There have been recent changes in the law regarding councils and their procurement and contracts processes due to an update in the Procurement Act. The resulting changes need to be in place before the Act comes fully in force on the 24th of February 2025. So this requires amendments to Chapter 12 of our Constitution. The Constitution Review Working Group is a cross-party group, and we have reviewed these changes, and we now need the agreement of full council, which is why this is here. These points will go in section 12.3 of our Constitution, and they ensure that all the officers must follow the common standard when it comes to procurement. It sets the levels of involvement for the scrutiny committees and the executive. It ensures that suppliers are treated confidentially and equally. It is quite a detailed report, but I'm hoping you will understand the importance of it and will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Imogen. Does anyone wish to speak against the report? Mary Louise, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not so much the, it's always the devil is in the details, isn't it? It's not so much what is stated, but what is not stated here that I would like to speak against, which is the revision to the Constitution, which removes the requirement that the Council has a vote on every contract which is entered into by the Council over a value of £5 million. And the reason for that is that in the name of efficiency and process, we are looking at another retreat from democratic accountability. Yeah? And what we have seen again and again is that every time we have a change, it involves less decision-making by us and more reliance on process. And it's that issue that I would like to speak against, because the rise of outsourcing throughout local government has always been put forward as an issue of efficiency and of cost-cutting, but it has also produced this situation where we as councillors have very little role in the lived experience, in improving the lived experience of our residents, which is what we're here to do. These services, which are now being put out to contract, are the core lived experience of our residents, and yet less and less is being given, attention is being given to us being able to vote on them, and to make any difference to them. And we have seen time and time again over the last 15 years issues of market failure, issues of an increased lack of flexibility. Sorry. Yep. Sorry, I've lost my thread now. No, sorry. No, that's
Just
fine.
hold on a second, Pauline.
Okay. No, that's absolutely fine. Sorry. So a lack of flexibility and ability to adjust to the reality or to the changing situations because of the costs, because of punitive out-of-contract costs. We've all seen these problems, and I think that the ability of the council to take a view and to contribute to those contracts is something really important that shouldn't be removed in the name of process. Because we look at, increasingly, we're talking about procurement as this kind of technocratic exercise, which is value-free. And saying that is itself a value statement. It is saying that local democracy and local politics has no role in the decisions about contracts, and those contracts are what is controlling most of the work of the council. So, I think this is not something which should be let go without note or warning. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie-Louise. Can I have a show of hands of those who want to speak during the debate, please. It's Prue and Pauline. Pauline, would you like to kick off?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't really expecting this. I can understand exactly where Mary Louise is coming from, and I agree with her. There's been too many things that have been removed from councillors' control in various places and left wholly with officers to decide, including some of the appeal committees and that sort of thing. I think we need to be sure that councillors are involved in these sort of things. Nevertheless, I'm very concerned about losing the majority of this, which is actually a change for legislative purposes. So I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to propose an amendment which essentially followed what Mary Louise says and took out the requirement to not vote on, if that's a double negative, not vote on contracts in full council, but retained all the other items in this thing, so that we could keep Mary Louise's point, which is that we should be voting on contracts of 5 million, but we actually also maintain all the other things in this amendment, this proposal, which I think are sensible things that we have to do legislatively. I don't know if that's possible or whether it's sensible, and maybe Prue could...
We need to continue the debate. Prue's next.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to suggest an alternative way forward because, surprisingly, I'm going to say I agree with Pauline that we have to pass the majority of this because it has to be passed by the 24th of February. So we can't not do it. There is an alternative way forward with this, which is to pass this for now, but we have the whole constitution coming to council in a couple of months, and there's another opportunity to debate that bit and have that as a separate item when we come to the constitution, so we can actually have a separate vote on it. If we don't pass this tonight, we're in trouble, and disentangling it is quite complicated, and you have to have something in writing, and I think officers would probably give the mayor the advice about how complicated it is to try and amend this on the hoof. So I would rather we bring it back. We can amend it again at the Constitution Review Working Group, but we need to pass the vast majority of it tonight.
Could I ask for a bit of advice on process? My understanding is that once you've voted on something, you can't change it within 6 months. I'm also concerned that at a later date we might not change it. So I'd like a bit of clarity, please.
Just hold on a second, Prue. Can we get some guidance on this? So what Andrew is saying here is that Prue's proposal would be okay. So we could vote this through, but we could revisit it as part of that constitutional review at a later date without being encumbered by the 6-month rule. That's correct, Andrew? Yeah.
Could I request a 5-minute adjournment, please, just to have a discussion about this?
Just hold on a second. I want to get the debate through. We haven't finished the debate yet.
I just want to make one point, which is that in the period between now and when we do the constitution, we already have a special council meeting to discuss the only contract we're likely to have, which is more than the 5 million. So that is already secured. So it won't make any practical difference now because there won't be another occasion on which we're doing that before we review the constitution.
I don't really want to take the adjournment. I think the way forward is quite clear.
I don't think it is. I would like to talk to the Labour group, please.
Sorry, I'll put the microphone on. We need to take a vote on the adjournment. So, yeah, we need a seconder. Charles, is that?
I'm happy to second. No.
Okay. So, okay, let's go to the vote on all of those in favour of an adjournment, please. Have we got a count? Yes, so that's carried. Thank you. So we will have a 5-minute adjournment. Thank you. Can we restart the webcast? Thank you. So we have a way forward. Pauline, would you like to read the amendment out, please?
Thank you, and thank you for your forbearance for 5 minutes. I'd like to propose that the removal of council approval for procurement for items over 5 million will be explicitly voted on when this item returns as part of the constitutional change, and I'd like that as another point, number 5, under item 102.
Do you have a seconder for that? Thank you, Prue. Now we'll move to a vote on the amendment. All of those in favour of the amendment, please. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, so that becomes a substantive with the 5 points. Now, Stephen, as a seconder of the original motion, has the right to reply. Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to second these recommended changes with this last-minute addition. To thrive in this new climate of financial constraints and ever-increasing demand for services, it is essential that Woking Council embraces the new opportunities provided by the Procurement Act 2023. This means having the best people supported by the right systems, structure and procedures, and it's great to see that this council is at the forefront in achieving this to put us in the best possible place to continue to drive best value for money and great services for our residents. Referring to the point that was made earlier, councils need to be more commercial to deliver value for money, and this is what is behind this legislation. But scrutiny, the effectiveness of scrutiny of contracts and value for money can be achieved still through the various governance committees at whatever level councils require. And I would encourage all councillors to take an interest through the various committees so that they can ensure that the contracts that are awarded do actually achieve what they're supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Now we move on to the vote for the amended report with the 5 recommendations. All of those in favour, please show. That's carried unanimously, I think. Thank you very much. That is the end of the meeting. I wish you all a very good night. Thank you.